Hail Ogsal, my tribe, and welcome to the Modern Barbarian Podcast. Today's episode, we are going to discuss some current events, things going on in the world that you should be aware of, and why we should all be monitoring a certain government agency right now. Now, be aware, I don't normally do political stuff on this channel. It's not really my thing, not what I'm into, but this one is important for all of us. Whether you're into politics or not, the overreach of the ATF is a major concern. We all need to be aware of what they're doing. We need to be monitoring what they're doing, and we need to be prepared to push back against what they are doing. So today we're going to talk about some of the stuff that's gone on in the last 4 or 5 years, how things have progressed along, and the major concerns that you need to be looking at. Got some notes here, some letters from the ATF we'll read, and there's one big one that just came out recently. That's going to be the last one we discussed, and it's kind of what triggered this because it shows their hand with all this other stuff. This other stuff you could think that maybe they were trying. It's about public safety, or they could hide it under that guise. They could talk about all kinds of stuff, but this new one, there's absolutely no way it's anything about public safety. It's 100% about taking away your right to be as good at your self-defense as you can be. So, we'll start off with a statement that there have been 5 major rule changes from the ATF in as many years. Right? We've got a bump stock ban, is where it really all started for us. Then they tried a pistol brace ban. They've tried to reclassify machine guns and go after things like forced reset triggers. They've tried to reclassify the frame and receiver of a firearm to include an unfinished block of metal that is not actually in any way or shape a firearm. And now they've also tried to change the definition of a gun dealer so a private citizen would have to get the government's permission to sell a firearm. That one has some more nefarious stuff in it as well, and we'll talk about it when it's that time. But we're going to start kind of chronologically. The very first real issue that ever came about in all of this was with the pistol braces. No. Well, yeah, so the first thing that happened was pistol braces. Those were in 2012. Right? In 2012, the ATF comes out with their letter and says that, yeah, pistol braces are fine. Right? I have that letter here so we can look at it. And the letter says, right here, let's see, they wrote it to, well, they didn't say to whom. So it just says, this refers to your recent correspondence and accompanying samples sent to the Firearms Technology Branch, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, Explosives, for evaluation. You are asking if the addition of this sample, a buffer tube forearm brace, would convert a firearm in a manner that would cause it to be classified as a rifle and thus a firearm regulated by the National Firearms Act, specifically 26 U.S.C. 5845 Alpha. The FTB evaluation revealed that the submitted device is constructed of a foam-type rubber similar to that used in developing prosthetic devices and 2 Velcro straps. The device, see enclosed photos, is molded to a pistol-style buffer tube for an AR-type firearm and is shaped to form an upside-down U. The shooter would insert his or her forearm into the device while gripping the pistol's hand grip, then tighten the Velcro straps for additional support and retention. Thus configured, the device provides the shooter with additional support of a firearm while it is still held and operated with one hand. We find that the device is not designed or intended to fire a weapon from the shoulder. Based on our evaluation, FTB finds that the submitted forearm brace, when attached to a firearm, does not convert that weapon to be fired from the shoulder and would not alter the classification of a pistol or other firearm. While a firearm so equipped would still be regulated by the Gun Control Act, such a firearm would not be subject to NFA controls. To facilitate the return of your submitted sample, please arrange for return shipping. This may be done via UPS CalTag pickup or simply by using a return shipping label from the U.S. Postal Service or any common carrier. If you wish to accomplish return via CalTag, please give FTB prior notice so the item can be ready for shipping, since UPS will only make 3 pickup attempts. We thank you for your inquiry and thus foregoing is responsive. And the foregoing is responsive. Sincerely, the chief firearm guy at the ATF when that happened. So, 2012. We designed pistol braces. They come out with this letter. They say they're good to go. Then, in 2015, right, we get an open letter on the redesign of stabilizing braces. This one's a little bit longer, so I'm only going to pull the relevant sections out of it. They start by talking about originally they were intended to support an AR-style pistol to be fired one-handed, and that they thought that was okay then, but now they're talking about redesigning them. Right? So, what they say here, ATF hereby confirms that if used as designed to assist shooters in stabilizing a handgun while shooting with a single hand, the device is not considered a shoulder stock and therefore may be attached to a handgun without making it an NFA firearm. However, ATF has received numerous inquiries regarding alternate uses for this device, including use as a shoulder stock, because the NFA defines both rifles and shotguns to include any weapon designed or redesigned, made or remade, and intended to be fired from the shoulder. Any person who redesigns a stabilizing brace for use as a shoulder stock makes an NFA firearm when attached to a pistol with a rifle barrel under 16 inches in length or a handgun with a smooth bore under 18 inches in length. The GCA does not define the term redesign, and therefore ATF applies the common meaning redesign is defined as to alter the appearance or function of per Webster's dictionary. This is not a novel interpretation. For example, ATF has previously advised that the individual possesses a destructive device when possessing anti-personnel ammunition with an otherwise unregulated 37 or 38 millimeter flare launcher. And they give the rule for that. Further, ATF has advised that even use of an unregulated flare and flare launcher as a weapon results in the making of an NFA item. So they're talking about the 37 millimeter flare launchers became destructive devices if you had anti-personnel ammunition in them, or if for some reason you ever shot somebody with one of the flares, they were saying it then became an NFA item. Even though there was no change, the ammunition was perfectly legal and the launcher was perfectly legal. If you use it in a self-defense situation and shoot somebody with it, now you have created an NFA item and go to jail forever. Then they're saying that that's perfectly cool too, and reference that in reference to this. So now they continue on to say, the pistol stabilizing brace was neither designed nor approved to be used as a shoulder stock, and therefore use as a shoulder stock constitutes a redesign of the device because a possessor has changed the very function of the item. Any individual letters stating otherwise are contrary to the plain language of the NFA, misapply federal law, and are hereby revoked. Any person who intends to use a handgun stabilizing brace as a shoulder stock on a pistol having a rifled barrel under 16 inches in length or a smooth bore firearm with a barrel under 18 inches in length must file an ATF Form 1 and pay the applicable tax because the resulting firearm will be subject to all provisions of the NFA. So here they're going back on their rule. They're saying, hey, I know we told you guys that this was fine 3 years ago and we let people buy and use them however they wanted for the last 3 years, but now we've changed our mind. So if you take this perfectly legal object and it ever touches your shoulder, now it's a short-barreled rifle. Now, if they have to prove that you've done that, right? But if they can ever prove that you have taken this thing and put it in your shoulder like a rifle, it is now a rifle. You don't have to change any piece or part on it. You don't have to make any modification. Just it's simply making contact with your shoulder. They term to be a redesign as therefore illegal, and they can tell you how to use your own piece of equipment and put you in jail forever if you use it in a way that they don't like it. Right? So that's what happened then. Then, in 2017, they come out with a third letter, again changing their stance. This one's even longer, and I'm not going to go through all of it because there's a whole bunch of background, and they talk about what we've already talked about. But they end by saying, to the extent the January 2015 open letter implied or has been construed to hold that incidental, sporadic, or situational use of an arm brace in its intended approved configuration, equipped firearm with a firing position at or near the shoulder was sufficient to constitute a redesign, such interpretations are incorrect and not consistent with ATF's interpretation of the statute or the manner in which it has historically been enforced. In that regard, we also note that the making of an NFA firearm pursuant to blah, 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 include the altering of an existing firearm such that after the alteration the firearm meets one of the enumerated descriptions in the law, whether or not that alteration is permanent. So, for example, one makes a short-barreled shotgun subject to the NFA by replacing a 20-inch barrel with a 16-inch barrel, even though that configuration may not be permanent. Nothing in the NFA requires that the making be irreversible. Similarly, an item that functions as a stock, if attached to a handgun in a manner that serves the objective purpose of allowing the firearm to be fired from the shoulder, may result in making a short-barreled rifle, even if the attachment is not permanent. The fact that the item may allow or even be intended by its manufacturer for other lawful purposes does not affect the NFA analysis. Again, the extent the open letter was confusing. We appreciate the opportunity to clarify our position. Thank you for your inquiry regarding this matter. So, what they're saying here is, we can't actually do that because saying that you made no actual changes to the gun at all other than touching it yourself with some part of your body, we can't legally call that a redesign. So what they did was say, if you make any changes at all to it from the way that it came out of the box, like you take it out of the box, you attach it. If you take off the Velcro straps, if you modify it in any way whatsoever, and then touch it to your shoulder, now you have created an NFA short-barreled rifle or a short-barreled shotgun if you put it on a shotgun, and we can put you in jail forever. This item that you bought that has stuff on it that you're not going to use, like a lot of people prefer not to strap it to their arm, just put it over it when they use it. It still makes it an NFA item, and you can go to jail forever. Even though you can put the Velcro strap back on, if at any time you take that Velcro strap off, they claim that it is forever an NFA item, and putting the Velcro strap back on it doesn't change it out of an NFA item once it's been made one, and it is forever illegal. But they did renege on the just touching it to your shoulders a redesign, but they did clarify that you cannot make any changes to it whatsoever. You can take it out of the box, you can mount it. If you make any changes to it, now it's an NFA item. Right? Then, 2023, they come out and this new proposed rule that's being fought in the courts, and they say pretty much that they're all stocks, and whether you shoulder it or not, and we're going to make you regulate them by paying a tax stamp and registering them with all of us, or you have to destroy them, and if you don't, we can put you in jail forever, and that's just the way it is, get bent. So now that's being fought in the courts. Several injunctions are in place, even though the ATF is trying to go around those injunctions and go after people. They say, well, we don't know who all the, so the injunctions are for like members of the Firearm Policy Coalition, and there's several others besides FPC, GOA, Gun Owners of America, and all that stuff. But they're saying, well, we don't know who your members are, so we can go after them, and then they have to prove they're a member to be not in trouble. Or you can just hand over your entire member list, fuck you ATF, and then we won't be allowed to go after them. And in some districts, they're saying, well, that ruling from that court down in Texas doesn't apply in our district. It only applies in the district that Texas is in, so we can do it anyway, even though that's not how it works at all. So they're blatantly going against it and trying to go after people anyway. It's never going to stick, but they're trying. So that's where it all kind of started, right? And in between the 2017 letter and the 2023 decision, we had the bump stock ban. Now, this is where the weaponization of the ATF really started, right? This is where it really starts to get bad. There was the Las Vegas shooting. A man used a bump stock to make a more rapid fire firearm, because you can shoot it faster with one of those. And he used it in a shooting from a hotel at a concert. We're not going to use his name because fuck that dude. I don't want anybody I don't want anybody getting famous for being a mass murderer. Fuck those guys. But it did happen. And this is while Trump was in office, and he told them, just outlaw all the bump stocks. They're gone. Executive order tells the ATF to do it, outlaws all the bump stocks. And most of America was on Trump's side there, And like, well, if Trump said it, it must be good, and I don't have a bump stock, so fuck it, let them have them, right? Go after them, outlaw the bump stocks, who cares? They're a toy anyway. Well, that set a precedent, a very dangerous precedent. And because Trump allowed it, now the Democrats that are in office are using the same thing, using this very dangerous precedent to come after all of our firearms rights. And so let's take a look at what they've done after that precedent was set. We just talked about one, the pistol brace ban, right? They also outlawed all the bump stocks. So there's two major changes to the rules in this country about firearms and who can have them and what parts they can have and what pieces they can go. Then they went after forced reset triggers. Anybody that doesn't know what a forced reset trigger is, it is a trigger so that when the action cycles, it pushes the trigger back forward. So there's different ways that a trigger can work. There's the standard semi-automatic trigger, where you pull the trigger, click, right? The action runs, you have to release the trigger, it catches back into the mechanism, you'll hear a second audible click, and you can pull the trigger again, right? The forced reset trigger forces your finger forward to catch that reset. So when it goes back, it hits a lever on the trigger, which forces the finger forward, hits the reset. The bolt closes, releases the trigger, and you can pull it again. It aids in firing a firearm faster because it forces the reset. The reset is the slowest part, so it forces the reset to happen for you. It makes it faster, but you're still individually pulling the trigger every time a round goes off. The ATF decided that they were going to reclassify what a machine gun is without any congressional oversight at all, to change the rule to include forced reset triggers as machine guns, right? So they're saying in their proceeding against FRTs that the FRT increases the firing rate of a firearm to that like a machine gun, and therefore is a machine gun, even though it functions entirely different, and you're having to pull the trigger yourself every single time, which is what the actual law says. It has to expel more than one projectile from a single function of the trigger. With a force reset trigger, the trigger is functioning every single time a round goes off as one function of the trigger. But they're saying because it shoots so fast, it's like a machine gun, so we're just going to call it a machine gun, and we don't really care what the law says. This is now illegal, right? And so now that there's this big thing, they say it forcing to reset now constitutes a single function of the trigger, right? So that's what they're trying to say, is because the machine forces the reset, that is still a single function of the trigger, even though your finger must apply pressure and re-pull the trigger for every single round. They're saying because it helps you with the reset, we're going to say that it's a single function of the trigger and try to get around all this. Well, that's the second thing. They started off by saying it shoots faster, so it's a machine gun. The court said, no, you're crazy. That's not what the law says. Get bent. So then they tried to change what a single function is and say, well, it pushes your finger forward, so it's still a single function of the trigger, even though your finger's moving. All over the place. They just keep changing their minds all over the place because they keep losing, and they keep going after it in a different way. Why? Because they've been weaponized by the Biden administration. They're after your individual firearms rights in any way, shape, form that they can get any of these firearm rights away from you. And they show their hand here at the end, and we'll talk about it, the very last one, but they really show their hand as to what they're doing with all this stuff. After the force reset triggers, you have the auto key card issue, and I don't know how many of you have heard about this, but the auto key card was literally a metal card, like a credit card size metal card, that had a laser etch on top, like nanometers deep laser etch on top of something called an auto sear. So you put these two pieces together, you can drop it into an AR, and it turns it into a machine gun. As long as you're holding the trigger, it fires. When you release the trigger, it stops firing, right? Now, this card was not an auto sear, but it had the shape of an auto sear on a metal card. So you could, in theory, have cut it out and made an auto sear, but you had to go through a whole bunch of stuff to do so. It was a novelty card that showed what the pieces of an auto sear looked like. That was kind of a you at the ATF, because it's not actually an auto sear. It's just a card. It's, a collectible piece, right? Well, they decided that this metal card with a picture drawn on it were machine guns. And so they get one, they give it to somebody at the ATF who specializes in building these things. And it took this gentleman over 40 minutes with a Dremel tool to convert it into a lightning link or an auto, the lightning link auto sear thing. It's actually what it's called. It's the lightning link. So yes, he took a metal card and then with Dremel metal cutting tools and sanding tools and all this and an hour of time converts it into a lightning link. So he manufactured a lightning link from a piece of metal card. Anybody can manufacture a lightning link from a metal card, whether there's a picture drawn on it or not. Anybody can go out there and grab a piece of sheet metal and make a lightning link. It's a thing you can do. Yes, it's illegal as fuck, but you can cut the metal shape out with metal cutters and then smooth it all out and create one. This guy just happened to do it out of this little novelty collectible card because it had this laser etching on it. And they said, well, now that you've made machine guns, right? So it starts off, they arrest the guy who was doing it. He gets 5 years in prison for selling metal cards with pictures printed on them. You cannot take what he sells, put it into a gun, and make it a machine gun. You have to illegally modify it, which it's already illegal to do. Take metal cutting tools and cut it down and shape it into this illegal object. He didn't sell the illegal object. He sold a metal card. But he gets 5 years in jail for it anyway. But worse than that, there's another guy who is a YouTuber who gets 5 years in jail for advertising the cards on his YouTube. He didn't make the cards. He didn't sell the cards. He didn't have anything to do with them other than being a paid advertiser on YouTube. And they arrested his ass for conspiracy to sell machine guns and then put him in jail for 5 years. He didn't have anything to do with the company. He never even owned one. But he got 5 years in prison because he got paid to advertise for him on YouTube. Talk about overreach of authority. All right? So, next, what do we got? After the weird auto keycard stuff. 2 dudes in jail for selling friggin' metal cards with funny pictures on them. Haha, right? Way to go, ATF. Really making us safer there. But, again, it all plays out as to why they wanted those gone. Then they're going to reclassify frames and receivers, right? So what they've done, they created this new rule to go after 80% lowers to try and say that they are now firearms because you could buy the frame or receiver of a gun legally that was 80% complete. It needed the last 20% of it done because that was the legal limit that you could have before it became a gun. And then they would sell it at that stage and the kits and instructions on how to finish it yourself so that you were making your own frame and receiver, which is perfectly legal in this country, to build your own firearm and not register it. But now they're trying to force it because they want this universal background check and this universal gun registry. It's why they made gun dealers keep all their paperwork forever. It's why they keep going in and they grab them when a gun dealer closes and they scan them into an unsearchable electronic database, even though we all found out from Congress that that's a lie and it is a searchable database the ATF has. They are creating an illegal gun registry and have been for decades. But they don't like that you can build your own now so easily, so they've gone after it and they've tried to redefine what a frame or receiver is. So now any piece of metal or plastic that could become a frame or receiver is now a firearm. If it is remotely shaped in the right way that it could ever become the frame or receiver, it has now been deemed a firearm by the ATF. Metal blocks could legally be called a receiver if this law was allowed to go through. It says the term frame or receiver shall include a partially complete, disassembled, or non-functional frame or receiver, including a frame or receiver parts kit that is designed to or may readily be completed, assembled, restored, or otherwise converted to function as a frame or receiver. That was not in the original law. That is just the ATF writing stuff down and saying that it is now the law. None of this has ever been approved by Congress. Congress has actively gone against them and said, no, that is not what this means. Stop it. And they're trying to do it anyway. Now, this got through the court system and was struck down, vacated entirely nationwide. And the ATF went crying to the courts and had the vacature, a stay put on it so they could still go after it. And now it's going up through the Supreme Court, and we got to wait for the Supreme Court to decide on it. But it is they could enforce this right now. There is an injunction against that enforcement for a certain company that makes these and any of their customers. But the ATF went back to the courts and said, no. The Supreme Court already said that we're going to hold this vacatur so that we could enforce this. Now you put another injunction against us saying we can't enforce it, and that's against the Supreme Court, which it's not. The Supreme Court just said the rule's not vacated in its entirety nationwide. They didn't say anything about other types of injunctive relief. So now there's an injunction against them, and they're bitching and whining about that, but there's one company that still can legally do this. But why would they go after all the frames and receivers? Well, they need it to take away your ability to legally make a firearm without telling them about it, because they want to know where all the guns are. The ATF is preparing for the country to go in a very bad direction. They understand that our government is about to do some shit that we are not going to like. They are preparing for the 2024 election. They are preparing to cheat their way through the 2024 election. And they need to know that the populace is as disarmed as possible and know where as many of the guns are as possible to make it as safe for them as possible to cheat on the election. So, in furtherance of that, they went after frames and receivers in the guise of public safety. The next thing they've gone after in the guise of public safety is the definition of a gun dealer. Now, this is where it starts to really go down the nefarious rabbit hole, right? They have redefined the definition of a gun dealer to say any person that makes a profit on the sale of a firearm is now a gun dealer. So, I own a gun, right? I do some custom work to one of my pistols and have it all tricked out and all this stuff, and then I decide I don't like the way that it came out and to sell it. If I make a profit on that from all the work that I've done, I am now a firearms dealer, and I need a federal firearms license and their permission to sell this gun and to keep records in perpetuity forever on any firearm I ever come into contact with or sell. Why? So that if I ever stop doing so, they get all the records and they go into their database for the gun registry. Or I have to allow them free access to my home, which is where the FFL would be for, because I'm not a firearms dealer. I'd have to do it to my house. It's the only building I've got, right? And they would have free access to my home at any time without a warrant to do complete searches of my home, warrantless, to check on the condition of the firearms that I'm storing as a federal firearms licensee. Yeah. Think about that for a minute. All because you could make a profit selling a gun. Another way they're trying to get you on it is limiting the number of firearms you can sell in a given time period. If you sell more than a certain number of guns in a given time period, you are now considered in need of a federal firearms license. Whether you made a profit on them or not, whether you were working on a personal gun collection or not, if you sell too many guns or buy too many guns within a given window, now by the new rule, you are a federal firearms licensee requirement and need to pay them to get a license and give up your right to privacy so they can search your home whenever they want and keep gun records for them in perpetuity. This is nothing but an attempt to create a gun registry by forcing everyone who ever sells a gun to become a dealer and keep records forever. That's all this is. They want to create a backdoor gun registry. So what they did is they tried to make it so every person who ever owns a gun will now have to get an FFL and keep records of where every gun they've ever touched has ever been or will ever be in perpetuity forever, so that they can legally come in and just snag this group of records and say, well, it's a for a crime now, we're going to look at it. It's not a registry, but you have all the records and you committed a crime, so now we're allowed to look at them. It's a gun registry. It's what they're trying to do. They're trying to backdoor their way around and create a gun registry. Right? So that's 6 major issues in 5 years with the ATF stepping on all over themselves and all over your rights. But here, this letter right here is where they really show their hand, what they're worried about. I'm going to read this letter to you, and then we're going to talk about what I think this actually means. So, this is issue number 7. This is the ATF unilaterally outlawing the civilian use of simunition. For those of you that don't know, simunition is like a round, like a real projectile, but it shoots a little paintball instead. but it works in specially modified firearms that work and function exactly like real firearms, right? And it propels the paintball with the use of a small explosive charge, just like real guns do. And they really hurt, right? And it is the absolute best way to train for being in a gunfight. Because what you do is you go get in a gunfight, and it hurts really friggin' bad. As pain is a great teacher, but you don't die from it. It feels a lot like getting shot. It acts like shooting stuff. You are in there running a gun that is the exact weight, the exact feel. It recoils exactly the same as a real one. But you're hitting them with little bitty paint rounds that hurt really, really bad. But you are going and getting in actual gunfights. It's like going to a dojo and sparring with a partner to learn MMA. You cannot learn to fight by hitting pads, right? You have to fight people. Simunition is how you learn to fight with a gun. And they have just unilaterally come out and said, only for military and law enforcement is that legal now. You can no longer sell this and allow civilians to use it in any way. So here we go. UTM put out this letter, which is the maker of Simunitions, to tell everybody about this. And they said, Dear valued UTM customer, Ultimate Training Munitions, UTM, has been the leading provider of non-lethal training ammunition and gun conversions to U.S. military and law enforcement for almost 2 decades. Additionally, we have been honored to have served and supported the private security, professional training, and shooting enthusiast community for almost as long. We are dedicated to the mission of training as well as sporting use of UTM products and services for all citizens of this great country. Many of our products, including ammunition and conversions, are made in our state-of-the-art manufacturing facility in the United Kingdom and imported to the U.S. for delivery to our broad customer base. Recently, we have been notified that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms has limited the import and delivery of our non-lethal training ammunition to military and law enforcement customers only. Unfortunately, the consequence of this is that we are currently only able to import our training products for these customers and not any other customers or markets. While we are dedicated and honored to serving our military and law enforcement brothers and sisters who will experience no change in availability or lead time of UTM products, our hope is that this restriction will be lifted at some point and we can resume supporting the entire shooting community with our products and services. We do want to reiterate that this is not a UTM company decision, but rather a very recent decision that has been imposed by the BATF and is beyond our control. In summary, orders and deliveries for military law enforcement customers are not affected by this change, but any non-military or law enforcement customers will not be able to purchase UTM products direct or from distributors effective immediately. UTM would like to thank all of you who have used our products for your support over the years as well as during this time. We look forward to the opportunity of making UTM available to you again in the future as any changes to restrictions allow. Until then, we will continue to service what customers we can and are determined to grow in product development, production, and design as we forge into 2024 and beyond. If you have any questions, feel free to contact our inside sales customer service team at sales@utmusa.com. Thank you, Ultimate Training Munitions. So, with no announcement, mind you, no discussion, no comment period, no anything, the ATF unilaterally told UTM you can no longer sell training ammunition to civilians, right? You can no longer help the American populace train to be better gunfighters. Only military and law enforcement are allowed access to this high-end training tool. I think this is where the ATF and the government as a whole right now are showing their hand. What are they preparing for? Why are they against civilians being better and safer and more equipped to be in a gunfight and defend themselves? Well, I can think of only one reason. They think that they are going to wind up in a gunfight with us. Period. That is the only reason to restrict access to non-lethal training ammunition. It cannot hurt you. It makes the gun into not even a gun anymore. It has to be converted to fire this stuff. It cannot shoot regular ammunition anymore. And then it can only shoot this specialty training ammunition that is non-lethal. So they're technically not even in charge of non-lethal stuff. This would be like them trying to regulate a fucking airsoft gun. But they've done it anyway. Why? because they do not want you to train. They want their people to train. They want military and law enforcement to be as trained and as deadly as possible, but not you, Joe Blow citizen. Why? Because they think they're going to have to fight you. They are terrified of you, of me, of all of us. They know that we outnumber them and we know how to fight. And they are doing everything in their power to take away any tools that we have to fight with and any tools we have to get better at learning to fight. They have drawn the line. That's it, right there. They showed their hand. They believe that a war is coming and that they are going to have to fight their citizens. And they are making sure that their citizens are as ill prepared as possible to defend themselves from tyranny. That means that they plan to be tyrannical. Now, notice that this happened right before the next election cycle. Why? Because they plan to cheat again. I don't know. A lot of people are like, there is no election fraud. There is no election fraud, right? This is wild, right-wing nut job conspiracies. Joe Biden won in a landslide. Everybody hates Trump. That's just the way it is. Get over it, crazy person. But every day, more and more stuff comes out. We have professionals going through all the records and finding tens of thousands of illegal mail-in ballots in areas that were swing areas that made major differences. Tens of thousands. Plenty enough to have changed the outcome of the vote in that area. Right? Cheating happened. Election fraud on a wholesale scale happened during the last election. How do we know this? Well, one, we keep getting evidence of it. But two, I want you to think about what actually happened. Let's just use a little bit of common sense and see if this makes any sense. Joe Biden, the vice president to Obama at the time, got more votes than any president in the history of the country. Period. More votes came in that said Joe Biden on them. Whether people cast them or not, that's up to you to believe. But more independent ballots with Joe Biden's name checked on it came in than any other president in the history of the country, including Obama himself, who was like the golden child when it happened, right? And he did no campaigning. He sat in a basement for COVID and occasionally put out an ad. He went nowhere, spoke to no one, did no campaigning, and got more votes than any other person in the history of the country has ever gotten, period. And now has the lowest approval rating of any president in the history of the country ever, period. So you expect me to believe that a country came together in a way to put more votes than it's ever put for a single person in the history of its ever, right? In its entire history. And then within 4 years turn on that man to make him the most unpopular president that's ever been elected? No, that didn't happen. How did he get so many votes? Mail-in ballot cheating. That's how he got so many votes. They were multi-counting ballots. They were producing ballots for people that weren't even alive anymore. They were letting people vote more than once with mail-in ballots. It was mass election fraud. Well hidden mass election fraud. And they got the mainstream media to tell everybody that if you think that's what happened, you're crazy. You're insane. There's absolutely no such thing as election fraud in this country. It's 100% perfectly verifiable. It's never happened. Right? And they repeated the lie so long that people thought it was the truth. Election fraud happened. More and more data comes out on it every single day. And they are preparing to do it again. And they've showed their hand. They're taking away your ability to learn to fight and defend yourself. And to have weapons that you could potentially go to war with them for tyranny with. Because they plan to be tyrannical. It doesn't get any clearer than that. So what do? Right? Well, I've been telling you this the whole time. Start your fucking tribe. Your tribe is how you will fight back. You need a group of people that get together and train together, that know what they're doing, that know how to fight together as a small unit. Right? You don't need whiz bang spec ops gear. You don't need night vision. You don't need any of that shit. You need people that you can trust, small arms, plenty of ammunition, and some armor. And a way to carry some of this gear we've talked about. We've gone over it a bunch of times, right? But the most important thing is the people, and that you shoot together and train together and be dangerous together, because you will not do this on your own. You need a tribe. So that's where we're going to wrap it up. And I'm going to give you some tools to help find that tribe. Been working hard. Things have been growing. You guys are out there. Continue to push this message out. Continue to be the barbarians that I know you can be. Continue to find more barbarians for your tribe. And here are some places you can look. If you like to use social media, we have a Facebook page for the Modern Barbarian Podcast. Link will be in the show notes. There is a Reddit page, r/Modern Barbarian Pod, if you're a Reddit user. Reddit is one of the most unregulated places on the internet right now. I wouldn't recommend doing like blatantly illegal or, anti-government shit on there. But you can get on Reddit and do just about whatever you want, say just about whatever you want. It's one of the most unregulated places on the internet right now. So it's worth checking out our little spot on there. Not a lot of people in it because a lot of the older generation that, like my age and older that believe in this stuff aren't really into it. But I found out about Reddit, and it's a really cool place. You can, get on there and actually have free speech. We also have X, what they used to be Twitter, right? We have one of those at mod_barbarian. Elon Musk bought that and is trying to make it a bastion of free speech and let people pretty much say whatever they want to say on there. Very unregulated also. So check that one out. I post some cool workout stuff on there all the time. Trying to build a community of people that want to get better, that want to work out, learn to fight, be a tribe, do that kind of stuff. So there's a place you can look for some tips and tricks on cool ideas of stuff to do and find other followers and talk to each other on there to grow that tribe that way. We also have an Instagram for putting out cool workout stuff and pictures. It's there's less tribe building on Instagram because it's more just a photo sharing basically thing. But there's some cool stuff about workout ideas and food prep ideas and stuff like that to help you get better. Modern barbarian stuff, weapons, gear, training is all on there. So you can check that out. We also have Tumblr, which is just an open blog. So there's all kinds of cool stuff on there. We have a Patreon. I've pushed it several times that, if you want private help working with becoming better, diet, nutrition stuff, workout planning stuff, firearms training stuff, getting your daily routine together. I can help with that. All you gotta do is jump on Patreon. It's $5 a month to have access to that, and I will spend one-on-one questions all the time you need to go through and put your diet plan together, to put your training plan together, to put your lifting and workout plans together and get you on the right path, help hold you accountable, check in with you all the time, kind of like private coaching, but over the internet. So if you want to try that out, it's on Patreon for $5. Those of you that are listening to this in a podcast format, we have a YouTube channel where you can watch me talk to you instead of just listen to the sound of my soothing, mellow voice. We also have those different podcast outlets like Spotify, Apple, Amazon Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. We are on all of that, all at the Modern Barbarian Podcast. So find all those, share them around, show your friends. If you hadn't been aware of this UTM thing, hadn't heard what's going on, and put it all together in one big thing of what the ATF's doing to see the progression, to put the pieces together and prepare for what's coming. Now you've got somebody that, something you can show one of your friends, like, hey, check this out. Look at this crazy shit. For those of you on the video, we're going to put this right here is what the letter looks like. Right? So scroll it up the screen real quick like that manually. Boom. Right? So that's what the letter looks like. You can find it on the internet, or you can pause the video and there you should be able to read it. And if not, it's readily available on the internet. UTM put it out everywhere. So get out there, spread the word, check out all the social media, help this grow, like, subscribe, follow, all the crap. You know what I'm saying? Do you appreciate it? Give it a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time. Modern Barbarian, signing off.